Fat boys, it's getting tight. After this week, only a couple left, and we all know it. As per usual, every single point, every single matchup's going to matter, and Week 12 did deliver. Now, if you were fortunate enough to celebrate Turkey Day, congratulations. It was nice. I actually did watch the very first game in a pub. Felt like the old days. Wasn't quite Fat Boys. It was more Britishy than that. But hey, there were people, there were Guinness, and people were yelling and cheering. That's all I can ask for. Did start off a really weird Turkey Day. That was the only upset. But Week 12 gave us a lot more points than we were used to in the fantasy world, a lot more green than red, or at least for some of us. And as we know, this week is going to have a huge impact on the playoff structure, who finishes where, who gets the bye weeks. Super exciting. And especially with a couple weeks left, it's getting tight. So I'm going to stop talking in this way. Well, I'm still talking, but let's cut the video. Let's get to the next part. Week 12 is in the books, and for the NFL people out there, this is leading us into the playoff chases. However, for fantasy people, which I know we all are, we are already in our playoff push, and this is really the last couple weeks to make some key changes and some key movements. Some people have clinched now, and some people might be mathematically out of it. So we're going to spend a bit more time on that. Let's see if I can follow through this time and be a little bit shorter, but there's just so many NFL stories I want to talk to, and many of them do bleed into our fantasy. I think for the first one, we got to talk about the early games. They did change a few things. A few of us had to rearrange our rosters, make some picks before we wanted to in terms of injuries. It does influence that with the extra couple days off. And realistically, we did it for 3 blowouts that we expected to be blowouts. Now, the scoring was high, so for fantasy people, all the people that were supposed to score mostly did, so not a lot of disappointment there. The only really big surprise, Green Bay over Detroit, and we knew that right away. So there's some Detroit people, depending on who you had, that might be a bit disappointed. But at the end, their run really did catch up. It's really just kind of the Gibbs owners and definitely the Detroit kicker owners that might be feeling a little bit sore. Realistically, though, the days went off pretty smoothly in terms of Thursday and Friday. I would say, though, with the divided America, I can't imagine it's been a lot of fun to sit down at large tabled gatherings like this with your extended family. Hopefully conversations don't bleed into the political, and with the recent elections and abortion laws being such a swing, and obviously elections coming up and the war in the Middle East, there's a lot of things that could probably get people's uncles and aunts off topic in a very uncomfortable way. But from what I understand, at least NFL kind of helped you out there, as the most contentious overall conversation in the country on Thursday happened when 77-year-old Dolly Parton walked on the stage for the halftime show at the Dallas Cowboys game, really getting most base people on the table to start the controversial conversation that started with the words, I don't know, would you? If that can help bring America together, then Dolly Parton is once again being a saint. Not only did she do 20 minutes on the stage, no lip synced, with people 1/4 of her age not being able to do that. Do remember what she did over COVID times and a lot of the money she gave for vaccine research, and she has literacy programs. So she actually might be America's hero, also by saving Thursday. Moving on, though, that Sunday, that meant that there was less games, so more attention on the games. Now, one of the positives, scoring was a little bit back this week. Not crazy, and there wasn't a lot of crazy games, but heading into Week 12, just a few quick stats for you. Lowest passing yards per game since effectively they started keeping that stat, so that's been about 60 years. That's not great. Highest sack rate since 1998, and as a lot of people know, when you get quarterback sacks, it does tend to end a lot of drives. There's a huge percentage when you are sacked that you don't convert. Field goals were at an all-time high, great for our kickers, but not good for the rest of our rosters, and some of our rosters don't even have kickers. And touchdowns were the lowest they had been since the mid-2000s. So coming into this week, the fact that even though some of the games weren't close, a lot of the big offenses came out and offensed, which was great for a lot of our teams. You'll know that because if you scroll through most of the league matchups, there were more greens than reds this week, which is typically, at least a good start. If you use 48 combined total points as kind of a metric for a decently scored game, there was at least 7 this week that hit or went beyond that, which we haven't been able to say in the last couple weeks. Take the Pittsburgh Steelers, for example. They obviously had an offensive coordinator that since they've had him, Matt Canada, I hate that Canada's his last name, so there's people out there that are going to blame the fact that he's not American. He's not Canadian. It's just his name, I think. Since he became part of the Steelers organization, they essentially haven't had a 400-yard total offense game. The second he leaves, they bounce back. How might that impact our fantasy rosters? Let's see if the 1 week, sometimes that coaching bubble happens. You get the 1 week of the FU to the coach, and then they go back to normal. Maybe not. Maybe Pittsburgh's offense will be a little bit more stable and something people can bank on. I don't know. Up to you. You can take that. But I'd say the biggest one, I mean, we had a couple tight games and a couple going down to the last field goal. One I'm going to mention later, but for a different reason. But the game of the week was likely Buffalo against Philly. Not only was it probably the most important game in terms of two highly touted teams that need to make either a lock on the first overall seed in the NFC, or for the Bills trying to get back into the playoff contention. As of right now, if the league stopped, I don't believe they would actually make the playoffs. And it really came down to some big plays. I mean, a lot of offense. The defense was a little bit more scarce, but for our fantasy rosters, this was great. A lot of us have a ton of those players on our teams, so we were probably pretty happy for the most case. Even people with Gabe Dave actually got points this week, although he may have been on your bench. I think the Philadelphia game has matched what most Philadelphia games have been. They look overmatched. They don't look necessarily like they're in control. Then suddenly, for just like the last little bit, they make a couple pushes, a couple runs, and then they somehow win, and you feel good in the end. If you haven't seen the end of the game, it's worth a watch. Probably the most impressive regular season field goal that I can remember. 59 yards in the rain, not favorable conditions, to tie it. Playoff kicks are their own little kind of chestnut. But in terms of regular season, I got to think that's one of the most important. Let's see how that kind of rolls moving on. It does kind of lead us to the parts of the season that you want to pay attention to, because they will have an impact, I would think, on our fantasy play. There's some teams that are trying to lock down that one seed. Say, for instance, in the AFC, it is hectic, not just to make the playoffs, but if you froze, if you took whatever the scores were at varying points over this past week of football, 4 different times there would have been a different number 1 seed in the AFC. So not only is the fight for that 6th and 7th playoff spot going to be fierce, to get that bye is going to be important to a lot of teams. So how they choose to kind of approach those matchups might be important. Versus the other way around, our other field goal kick to end all field goal kicks, the Patriots went down for a tying field goal, and it was essentially a toe poke, and mysteriously they missed, meaning that they are a lock right now for at least one of the top 3 picks in the draft next year. So I got to think, Patriots fans probably are overall okay that they lost to the Giants, because it actually increased their odds. I'm wondering, Bear fans, how you feel. It was a pretty anemic Monday nighter with Minnesota and Chicago. Chicago's not really looking like they're going to be a playoff hopeful. They really would have to go on a run and get a lot of help. I know they're kind of showing off Fields to see, is he going to be the guy? If you're not aware, they also have the Carolina Panthers, which is currently the number 1 overall pick. Had they lost that game, they would be getting the number 1 and the number 4 for next year. They did win the game, so that's no longer a thing. So I got to wonder, Chicago fans out there, if you're really happy about that last-minute win, or if maybe you would have been okay with a loss there. Speaking of next week, we're going to get right into it. It is an important one for all fantasy leagues. We are approaching the playoffs. A lot of last-minute things. A few people are starting to lock in their playoff spots. A few people are getting eliminated. We'll go over that when I go over each of the leagues. But I got to mention the bye weeks. This is going to be big. 6 teams. Once again, NFL is doing it to us one more time. I believe next week there's still byes, and then after that, I don't think there are anymore. But for this week, the Giants probably doesn't affect too many other people other than maybe some wide receivers, but definitely Barkley. Minnesota, we do have some of their receivers, right? They're tight end, top tight end in the league. That's going to have an impact. Chicago, again, people are in love with Fields. You got Moore, right? The revolving running backs. Vegas, Jacobs has been an asset, Devontae Adams. But I think the big 2, Baltimore Ravens, Buffalo Bills, both of them are out. Both have most of their offense covered by us, and their defenses, and their kickers. So we're going to want to get to it. How are you going to react, and what should you do? First, maybe we do the matchups. Then let's think about next week. We're going to see it early and often here, folks. I mentioned it. The scoring was back in the fantasy world. We had a bunch of teams, well, at least 2 over 150 and a couple not too far off. But in all that scoring, not only was this, I think, one of the tighter matchups, not the tightest, but fairly tight considering. Congratulations. You needed a big win. You were kind of in that middle zone of just making the playoffs, just on the outskirts, just in. You needed to kind of throw thunder down on the ground, and you sure did. You jumped ahead a couple spots, which we'll get to when I do kind of the recap at the end, but the 156 was massive. Jake, it's not like you were flimsy here. You would have beaten some other teams, but on the plus side for you, A solid effort throughout the season means you've hung on to your top spot, and we'll talk about that one later. But just looking into our matchup, a lot of top scorers here, right? So if we look on V on your side, that weird part is you walk into this and you think, well, Herbert and Chase are going to be your go-tos. Maybe not Chase with his quarterback. I just mean in general. And they were your two disappointments. I mean, your kicker did roughly what they should, and everybody else overperformed. Miami, that was our defense 1, so congrats on that one. Laporta was our tight end 3. Your running backs were massive. Jacobs was the running back 5, and you see Henry not that far behind. Evans was our wide receiver 1 with a great 22. You see Samuel not too far from, so he actually did jump out of the top 5, but he was obviously scoring you points. Can't complain about any of that. On your bench, you actually still had Zay Flowers just because you like to grow more on your bench, and you had Chuba Hubbard, so you had options, buddy. Everyone was kind of going on all cylinders. Jake, from your end, I mean, I think most people thought Jackson was going to have a game and a half against a Chargers defense that can't really stop people. Unfortunately, they were just kind of cruise control, so it didn't really help you out there. Hill does what Hill does, and he did just great for you. He was our wide receiver 2, so we had our top 2 wide receivers in this particular game. Taylor was just outside of the top 5. I think he was our running back 6, if I believe. And Baltimore's defense did great for you, as they always tend to, out of the top 5, but 19 points. Come on, that's not so bad. Unfortunately, you did have some underperformances here. Charbonnet, I think most people thought with the injury, maybe he'd put up a little bit more of a fight, but San Fran's defense is just tough, dude. You did have the Jets defense on your bench, so 2 decent scoring defenses, and Najee might have helped you out. I mean, with Matt Canada and the change, I don't think anyone really knew what was going to happen there. That wouldn't have been enough, though. V was not going to be denied this week. So like I said, Jake, feel lucky. You got out of a loss, but you still keep your number 1 spot. V, if you're looking for momentum heading into the playoffs, you're getting it, pal. It was the battle of the basement, but don't tell them that, or especially don't tell Rothwell, because he took it pretty serious. Now, I do think Rothwell with the win, you're not mathematically out. Chaz, you might be out with the loss, but I'd have to do some math here to try and double check. How it went down, Chaz first. I mean, you took a gamble on Foreman being healthy, and it was Chicago or bust, and it was bust, unfortunately for you. Now, Murray getting the pickup over Burrow, I think, once he went down, I think that was a good call by you, so well done. Kupp, though, has just been disappointing. Who knows? Maybe he'll snap out of it. Even Brown, last couple weeks, most consistent receiver to Nick so good. So let's see how that kind of dwells out. You do have some options, though, at running back. There are some people on the waiver wire. It's the benefit of having a short bench. So I expect you to bounce back next week, regardless of whether you have a shot or not, because I know you got the competitive spirit. Rothwell, how did you do it? I mean, look at your wide receivers. There are weeks where Gabe, Dave, and Rice would barely score 10 combined. Now they're over 40. Rice actually was our wide receiver 3. Pollard outside of the top 5, but finally he's scoring touchdowns for you. Bijan was our running back 3, so well done there. San Francisco just out of the top 10, and actually here we had a tied for 4th, so in our top 5, 4 and 5, or tied for 4, you get how math works. The only 2 kickers, though, in the top 5 that anyone took, but your kickers negated themselves. Rothwell, you did leave little points on the bench, but honestly, it would have been a downgrade except for Mixon and your flex. So congrats about keeping things alive. Chaz, unfortunately, I mean, I know this is the battle of the 2 people that may have actually watched the afternoon games in the afternoon. Although Chaz got the holiday, I don't think, Mark, they really celebrate that. Even in Alberta, that of all the provinces is the one that maybe wants to be a little more American. They still do Canadian Thanksgiving at the right time. So you got to watch it on good times and you got to enjoy. Mark, like I said, it's a never say die attitude here. And if you're going to make a move, now's the time. You keep putting up 150 each week, you might just have a chance, pal. In another matchup that might prove to be pivotal, you're taking shots here, Horst. I know you're just waiting and waiting and waiting for someone to come off the waiver or the injury list. He didn't, and now he's got a bye week, so you're still treading water. You're still doing fine, but that 5th spot isn't going to stay if you keep losing, buddy, so you got to make sure you push. Waylon, you're in the same boat as me in terms of, I'll talk about myself in a second, but we're on the outside trying to pick and look and see if we can get ourselves in, and you're doing the right way to do it. You're scoring high and you're getting the wins. How did you do it? I mean, you felt pretty good probably on Thanksgiving Day when Dax came out and already put up a few points for you, so well done there. Dax was actually our quarterback 3 on the week. Ridley, not out of the top 5, but I'd be pretty happy with that performance, and Pacheco was our running back 4, whereas TJ, once again, tight end 4. Got to feel good about that. Denver was actually our second highest scoring defense, just behind Miami there. Or actually, they might have been tied. I didn't actually check on the points. I think we got it, though. You did leave Cook on the bench, who had an okay game, but didn't really need him. You scored more than enough, unless you just want to push 150 to spike the ball. So well done, sir. Still very much in the hunt, and that's exactly what you need to do. Horst, you're going to have to rebound, buddy, but what sucks is your two highest scoring people by far were your quarterbacks. That was our quarterback 2 and our quarterback 4. So you made the right call. All right, sitting the 31-point scoring quarterback was the right choice for the 35-point scoring one. Devontae Smith actually was also the guy that cracked the top 5. He was our 4th overall receiver, but that was it. You couldn't really. Your running backs let you down massively. It's unlikely he'll stay on your team considering he has a bye next week, and you need a tight end. So my guess would be that's where it's going to come from, but. What can I say? You just have to kind of put it behind you. You did overscore your predicted, so it's not like you were a complete slouch. You just bumped into a week where people were scoring 140s. So, going to have to rebound. Like I said, you win out, you're still fine. You win 1 out of 2, you maybe got a shot. But if you lose the next 2, I got to think with the way the league's going, you might let that playoff spot slip. So, good luck on the rebound, though I'm on the outside in. I say good luck because I like you, but I kind of want your playoff spot. Speaking of myself, I did exactly what I said Waylon did as well. We both put up some points. Now Waylon put a few more points up, but we both got the wins and we both stayed alive. But unfortunately, we're both on the outside looking in to people like Ben, who are on the inside looking out. How did I do it? Lawrence was actually the quarterback 6. Oddly enough, at one point in the season, I did have Love as well, who was the quarterback 5, but I'm not going to split hairs because realistically, Williams coming back and then being our RB1 was huge, not necessarily expected, but certainly welcome if that's just what he wants to do. Other than that, I didn't have a phenomenal week. I did leave Nico on the bench, and he was our wide receiver 5. I was dealing with some injuries and whatnot, so hey, I'll take it. Ben, Mahomes is doing what he normally does right this year, is just around as predicted. Got to be happy with McCaffrey, but he's doing what he always does, and that's our running back 2 this week to my running back 1. And obviously you got your boy in Miami here who currently has an empty backfield, as you know, having the backup on the bench here. You did fine. I mean, Thielen was a massive disappointment. Brown would have been nice there and definitely would have made things closer. But at the end of the day, it was just one of the things that you overachieved your performance here or your predicteds, just not enough. You didn't have that one guy like I did that just went off and changed your day, or you did, but they were the people you expected to, I guess you can say. Still in 3rd though, buddy, so don't cry too much, and you're still in the driver's seat here, so win and you're through. I think you need 1 of the next 2 wins for sure, maybe both. I don't think so. I think 1 will do it, and then you might clinch. Actually, just double check. Maybe you've already clinched. Let's go look. I lied. I said we were going to look. We're not going to look. Well, we are, but later. First, battle of the old math department here. We got Underhill and B. I'm not going to go ahead and say in a week that there was super excited and high-scoring matchups that this was the best one, but it was the closest one, 10 points and change. Now, how did Justin hang on? Now, number 1, he did just get over his predicteds, and he would have just cleared B's predicteds had he hit him. It was a whole lot of Buffalo here. All right, obviously we got Allen with the quarterback 1 performance. Fantastic job by him. Diggs did quite well, but you got Diggs and Dell and Dallas and Beats and Bears. I don't know. But Dallas was our defense 5. Okay, and everyone else I mentioned was fine, but the rest of the team did not do well for you, pal. Now you do have some issues. Now Moss might prove to be decent with Taylor potentially going out. You did have some injury issues and whatnot, but you're going to have some bye issues next week. So Underhill, you want to keep that 2nd spot alive, or you don't just want to give the whole thing to Jake. You might want to do something about it, although I think the playoff spot is pretty much spoken for. B, you lost, but you still held onto your 6th spot, I think mainly because of the points scored, so that helps you out. Having 1 week that was off in this case isn't going to cost you. Now, Stevenson was your lone star here, and I'd say Moore as well. If you watch the Monday Nighter, maybe we're just hoping for miracles with Fields to more. Fields actually didn't have a horrible game. He just kept fumbling the stupid ball for you. Because, obviously getting almost 60 yards with his feet is going to help you out. How do they rebound next week? Let's see. But you also did have the better option probably in Goff. Had you put him in, it would have been real tight. Had you put him in and I think, maybe Robinson for Warren, you might have taken it. But, again, hindsight's 2020. You're still in the top 6, meaning you're still making the playoffs, which means that you're still in the driver's seat. Already covered these, so let's just go down to the aforementioned issue here. Now, last week this happened. We got our top 2 clinched. Ben, I knew you didn't clinch, just trying to create some suspense, but you're looking pretty good because obviously you are still a high-scoring team. But with Will getting close, this could, there could be some passing of the torch here. You got to see who's playing with who. We do have this 3-way tie for 4th, and then the 2 tie down here where we are still hunting. Now, I said, Mark, you might statistically still have a chance. You really would need to win out and win big, so it's not super likely for Waylon and I. Again, we'd have to win, and we've got some points on 6th, and in my case, points on 5. So we are a realistic jump up here. So it really is going to come down to who plays who. So if you have not looked yet, let's take a quick gander at week 13. Now, these numbers are going to be way off. Let's take this one, for example. So our Ben versus Chaz here. Why is it way off? Look at the bye weeks. Okay, we got Buffalo, Baltimore. These are big ones for people. Well, obviously, Ertz in Arizona, who may or may not be hurt, but may be coming back. Let's see how that goes. So obviously, we're going to have to make some moves. Just be alive. We are a veteran league. We know how to do this. But aside from that matchup, probably one of the hugest ones for me versus Horse. Now, technically, I've got Horse by a few points here, but it's close. So if you beat me and you beat me by 20, which tends to be what happens when we get beat in this league, then you would not only get the win, but you'd get the point differential. So a big one for you. Man, am I glad that Minnesota's on a bye, so I wouldn't have to get Jefferson coming back. Waylon, I'm not going to lie to you, you probably didn't want to play Jake, but maybe he's not paying attention as much, But the number one person, you'd rather have somebody probably in the 5-6 spot, 4th spot that you could maybe tie and get past, but it is what it is. I already mentioned Ben's matchup. We got Mark. If you want to keep it alive, you're going to have to pump B, and the rest of us in the 7th and 8th spots would really appreciate if you did. Or if V wants to take a tumble, it is what it is. Comes down to it, though, none of us really playing each other, but I think next week that might change. Week 13 is going to be a big one, as per usual. I expect maybe somebody else clinches a spot to the playoffs. Maybe someone else gets knocked out. Maybe the top 6 stays the same. Who knows? Only time will tell. Till then, that's a wrap on week 12, and it's getting tight. Can't wait till week 13.